Good afternoon. Welcome to the Connected Table Live. I'm your host, Melanie Young, with my co-host and sidekick, David Ransom. We are your insatiably curious culinary couple, and each week we bring you dynamic people who work front and center and behind the scenes in food, beverage, hospitality. And today we're going to talk to two ladies who are best-selling cookbook authors in very different areas. I'm so excited about our next guest. David and I just saw her at a book launch for her new book, Meet Paris Oyster, in New York. I've been a big fan of hers for many, many years, back in the days when I worked with the James Beard Foundation. She has a lifestyle that I long for, even though I happen to love my lifestyle. But this is why. You love her because she recommends bread, champagne, chocolate, and romance as the key ingredients to a balanced diet and lifestyle. Hello. She describes herself as a wife. She's an international best-selling author, speaker, traveler, and her favorite hobbies are breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay, just that alone. But the fact that she has written international best-selling books, which I have read, and I have taken and used some of her recipes, called French Women Don't Get Fat, The Secret of Eating for Pleasure. Hello, I love it. Women for All Seasons, A Year of Secrets, Recipes, and Pleasure, and French Women Don't Get Facelifts. I need to pick that one up. The Secret of Aging with Style and Attitude, and some other books. So love her books, as so do many. And
we are talking about the one and only Mireille Guiliano. Mireille, welcome to the show.
Mireille Guiliano. Yes, Mireille.
Hello, Melanie and David. How are you?
Welcome to the show. We're thrilled to have you on.
Well, I'm thrilled to be with you.
Well, we also want to add that not only are you the ambassador, you have been called the High Priestess of French Lady Wisdom and the Ambassador of France in the Art and Living and Art of Living Guru. But also, you know, the way I originally met you was you were overseeing Veuve Clicquot, and you basically took Veuve Clicquot from less than 1% market share to more than 25% in the United States, and that is pretty significant.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. I mean, you know, I'll be honest with you. I've always wanted to, A, run a champagne house and be a brand ambassador, B, write international best-selling lifestyle books like for food, and C, live in France.
Well, it doesn't work like that, you know. I didn't plan any of the above, and look, you know, you just never know in life.
It's serendipity, right?
Yeah.
Well, you are here. You came to New York because you have a new book out called Meet Paris Oyster, which is a delightful little sliver of a book about one of my favorite topics, oysters. Tell us about it and what inspired you to write it. It's a bit different from your other lifestyle books. So tell us about it.
Well, it is and it is not, in that, you know, all my books are aimed at making a little difference.
True.
And let's say that in French Women Don't Get Fat, it made apparently a lot of difference to a lot of women and men all over the world. But this one was something I discovered when I wrote the French Women Don't Get Facelifts, which my editor asked me to write about the dozen food I eat the most of, which was not easy to do. But obviously oysters was high on the list. And, you know, the French don't know much about nutrition or don't count calories or things like that. So I didn't know much why we love oysters so much and why we eat so many of them. So I looked it up, and to my surprise, it was a power of nutrition. And I thought, oh my God, if I can do for oysters what I did for the leeks or the yogurt, maybe I can make another little difference.
I just want to take a leek break. Ooh, that sounds weird. I did buy all the leeks. I never was a leek eater, but your recipe made me want to buy a ton of leeks and make the soup and eat leeks, and really you converted me into leek. I have not tried making the homemade yogurt yet, but I really want to, because I hear that most of the yogurts I eat are not, you know, they're filled with other things. But those really were revolutionary. Now, I have been, and David is, and that was a qualification of us becoming a couple. He loves raw oysters. That was one of my quizzes. Yes. And we love them so much that we eat our Asian oysters on our birthdays, which are very similar. Why oysters? I know that there's a big tradition during the holidays, but why oysters? Why do the French love them so much?
Well, because they love the sea. You know, France is a country that's practically surrounded from north to all along the coast, the Atlantic coast, the Channel, the Atlantic coast down to Spain with water. and then the Mediterranean. But most of the oyster grow from Normandy down to the Bassin d'Arcachon. And so for French people, seafood and fish is a very big part of our nutrition. We don't eat as much red meat as people think we do. It's more an exception than the rule, and it's more like maybe once a week or twice a month. But oysters we eat a lot of. They're very, very nutritious. It's like a very lean protein. It has basically very few calories, if you must count calories, but it also is a perfect antioxidant, and it has huge amount of vitamins from A to B1, B12, it has zinc, it has iron, it has magnesium, it has potassium, all the things that we, and particularly women, and that's why I made a joke in the book on French Women Don't Get Facelift, which is really about aging, how you change the way you eat and how your metabolism change. And I said there are very few things we can not do more of or eat more of, and oysters is the exception. Oh. Because if you have twice a week for 6 months a year, 6 oysters, you get your immune system really in great shape. And I never made the connection between that and although I spend a lot of time in the fall in Paris and I eat oysters, I would say probably 3-4 times a week. It's often the choice of lunch when I see a girlfriend or to go around the corner and to go to Régis. And it never occurred to me why I felt so good. And when I had done that research, I said, well, now I got the key. This is it. And I'm convinced that it is very good food.
Régis is the name of the restaurant. It's the exact name of the restaurant you write about, which is so funny. It's called...
Yeah, it's called Vitrerie Régis. Régis
That's right.
Oyster Shark, which is not exactly a shark. It's a small but very elegant and romantic and enticing little restaurant. And you really feel... all is lacking when you sit there is just looking at the sea. But you can imagine that when you eat oysters. So,
and with the release of this book, it will be equally hard to get into.
Well, it's always been hard because, he doesn't have a phone, he doesn't take reservations, and he doesn't... He's, the king in that he doesn't make... you can be his best friend or his... his most important customer, it doesn't matter. There is
tiny.
A wait, and you're just part of the line, and come back in 10 minutes. But people are used to it, and just walk around the block and go and see the Seine and come back, and it's worth it because the experience of eating great oysters is unusual still. Even in France, when, it's not the same eating oysters at Régis as it is in a big, huge brasserie, where you might not have the freshest oysters, where today, because of, economy of scale and because all of those brasseries are owned by big groups, they don't hire the best sharkers, and you get grits like you can get all over the world in places where they're not open properly. You might not have the best bread, the best butter, and at Régis you have all of that. And that to me is another reason why I wanted to write this book, which I said, it's to make a difference, but also to educate people and also to help people, because I think people like Régis and all the characters in the book, from the winemakers to the oyster suppliers, all these people, we don't give them a medal, and yet they are tremendously hardworking people. They're passionate, they're committed, they are perfectionists in their own way, and they might be difficult. They are who they are, but you can't help but love them because of all the pleasures they give us. So that was my motivation in many ways.
It's a delightful little book, and Régis, who we were able to meet, is quite the character, and I know I can't wait to go when I'm back in Paris, because I agree with you. There's some places that you go that are just so singular in the experience you have, and I'm thinking about a little sliver of a tapas bar that we love in Barcelona.
It doesn't have to be complicated. Mm-hmm. You can be very happy just eating a dozen oysters, because they are so good and so fresh, and and so well presented, and with a good glass of wine. He picked all his wines, and he's very particular, But you can't have a bad glass of wine there, even if the selection is limited. And the service is wonderful. He's trained all his people. He has the best oyster shucker in Paris. How he got him, I don't know, but it's amazing. And it's an experience, so it's special.
Well, it sounds like it's a fabulous place. And obviously, Melanie and you and I are going to have to put some comfortable shoes on and go wait in line next time we go to Paris.
That's right.
You have to know a few things, but I mean, if you come early or if you come late, you have a much better chance. And it's much easier, obviously, for lunch than it is for dinner. And
it's like Shake Shack.
Exactly, Shake Shack. I'd love to touch on. You said something about what to drink with oysters when you have oysters.
Yes.
There's obviously a lot of different options out there. You come from the champagne world. Obviously, that's one. A lot of people think Sancerre is a great option. There's also Muscadet. What do you drink when you have oysters? What's your wine of choice these days?
Well, I have to say that obviously Régis has had an influence on me, because most of my life, when I was in the champagne business, I mean, I grew up on champagne. It was my mother's favorite wine and all. And so, when I would order half a dozen or a dozen oysters in a restaurant for my work during my 20 years at Clicquot, whether in France or here, I would have a glass of champagne, and I really like the combination. But Régis, and then of course, when you are in the Marraine and you drink Sancerre, I mean, people are very into local in France. If you are in Paris, you tend to drink Sancerre because it's like the closest place to Paris. But if you're in the Loire area, you'll have Muscadet, and they all go fine with them. I mean, again, it's a matter of what oyster you eat and what mood you're in, but. I must say now that I have visited Sancerre and the two producers that he favors, and I love a glass of Sancerre with oysters. I would say after champagne, it's my preferred beverage. I could never drink just because I've never liked things like beer, for example. In Arcachon, for example, which is near Bordeaux, you drink an entre-deux-mer,
Oh, yeah.
While Bordeaux, it's good there, but somehow in Paris it doesn't work for me.
Right. Well, so, we can understand that. It's funny. A little anecdote. Melanie and I were in Bordeaux a couple of years ago, and we had a free afternoon. So we went into the city of Bordeaux, and we sat down at a wonderful little brasserie there, and had dozens of oysters, oyster after oyster plate, and we were drinking entre deux mer while we were there, and it was and it did work beautifully, of course. But sitting outside in the city of Bordeaux, looking at the opera house across the street, obviously makes it so.
Yeah, somehow when you drink the wine in the area where it is produced, it always tastes better.
Sure.
Particularly with the food, it's just it's the aura of it. It makes a huge difference. And I, like you, have been in fact, my favorite milk is champagne. Mother's milk, and it's still and always my favorite go-to beverage. We'd like to talk a little bit. You had such a thriving, amazing career at Veuve Clicquot and did so many things. When you look back at that part of your life, what do you feel is your best legacy or some of your most memorable moments?
Wow.
I know, 20 years.
I tend not to look back. I mean, I'm a person who lives in the present. Maybe it's my yoga and meditation lifestyle, but I would say, it was 20 years of great fun. I mean, obviously there were difficult and tough moments, when you start from scratch and you build a team and a portfolio and a customer base, and you had to educate people, but all of it together was great fun because it was so diversified. It was just not like writing a press release. You had to do that because we're a small team and we didn't have a big budget. So you tend to be much more creative and think out of the box and take risks. And work harder and smarter. And I think I was lucky enough to have such a team, and that's what made the difference in the end.
Well, I used to go to the Yellow Moss events, and they were so much fun. And how that was like thing. But I think and I'm like you. I like you. I had a 20-year run that was fabulous. But like you, probably because of yoga, I like to think of the present as well. So looking at your present life and your future life, where do you see yourself going with your now? You are a lifestyle brand.
Well.
Pretty much.
Sort of, because of the, obviously very few books make it at the international level, but I think because of the message of my book and the narrative, even the recipes, most cookbooks are just don't get exported and translated. I mean, obviously because the food is different and all that, but mine did, and I think it's the ingredients of the books were the personal narrative and a true story, and readers could apply what I said to their life. I mean, the idea was basic. I mean, it was not, I didn't invent it. It was the French lifestyle, and I just shared it. It was common sense, but it was the way I provided the information that was appealing to people because they felt like, I was one of them. I was not a celebrity or, someone pushed by some kind of marketing things. It was just my personal story. And it showed that, if I could do it, if I could be fat and get back to normal, why could not everybody else do it? And I think the fact that it was the first, of course, it's a matter of timing and location, and as many say, luck. And I always say that the smiling angel from the cathedral in Reims has been good to me all my life, really overlooking.
Well, Mireille, obviously, being French and it helps because somehow it just doesn't sound the same if it was German women don't get fat. It just doesn't ring.
True. Of course. Yeah.
I mean, let's start with the origins of where we're talking about. Or Southern women don't get fat. I mean, they do. But French women always have this amazing put-togetherness. And they eat all that wonderful bread and cheese and drink the wine and say they don't exercise. And they all look fantastic. And I would love to, live that life and have, done so in many ways because I find that it's inspiring and it is a great lifestyle. Going back to oysters, I want to also note that this little book, Meet Paris Oyster, has, and you talked about the conversational style of the book, which is what is the connection? Because some people go, Meet Paris Oyster, what's that about? But there's some great little recipes, and there's a lot of background on just the whole culture of eating oysters in France and elsewhere. Do you eat oysters in the non-R months?
Yes, of course, because I explained in the book that the almonds was in the 18th century, when they had no refrigeration, and that's a good point that you bring because the king's doctors were recommending that he eats oysters a lot. Of course, they didn't quite know why. And in those days, you had to bring, the oyster by coach from Cancale or wherever in Normandy or Brittany, and it took a long time. So in the summer months, of course, they knew that it was dangerous because you could get sick from the bacteria and the lack of good refrigeration. So nobody would eat oysters. But nowadays, we don't have that problem. And although, obviously July and August are not the top months in the summer in France to eat oysters because it's warm and many of those places actually take a vacation. But you can eat them. I've eaten in Provence, we have oysters too in Bouzigues near the Camargue. And I ate some last summer in July and August and they were perfectly fine. Because again, they're taken out of the sea and served fresh or put in a cool place so that you don't get any kind of problem. So it's a myth nowadays to eat them just in the R months.
Well, it's interesting. You talk so much about France, but you spend a lot of time in New York as well. Do you have an American oyster that's a favorite of yours? Because there are obviously oysters that come from a lot of different places in the U.S. as well. Do you have a couple of favorites?
I love many. Actually, the U.S. it's a fantastic ground to learn about oysters because in France it's pretty simple. The types we have and the size we have. Here you have hundreds of varieties, and I just tweeted a week or two ago about a little place in the village that just opened and had two new oysters for me, and they were both fantastic. One came from Massachusetts and one from Seattle. But I would say I love, of course, the Kumamoto from Oregon. And I love oysters from the whole coast, from Rhode Island up to Cape Cod and, Duxbury and all that has some really small oysters suppliers, not unlike the type that Regis used and works with, who are very quality-minded and aging. The quality of the oyster has to do with not only where it grows and how it's being taken care of. I mean, it's like taking care of a baby, but also the place and the texture has to do with the aging. So if it's very, very good to make the analogy with wine. If you age your wine a year more than your neighbor, you're more likely to have a better wine. So with oysters, it's the same thing. And you have now some real interest in oysters on the East Coast and the West Coast of the United States, and really some great producers who want to make a comeback and are very passionate about the quality. So that's good for America. But I think we need to. I'm surprised at the number of people who still are like they were afraid of the leek or the yogurt. They're afraid of the oysters.
Well, we
need to educate, and it's good because now there are more and more spots that open and serve oysters. So to introduce people, and I always say, don't force people to eat them raw, but try them with warm oysters, whether they are fried or roasted or poached. They are wonderful, or in an omelette, as I have one recipe. They are a wonderful way to have people taste that texture and the steam, and hopefully they will warm up to a fresh oyster.
Well, Mireille, we have to wrap up. I just got a cue. I just want to quick before I go. Mireille Guiliano, MireilleGuiliano.com. Twitter, French_women, Facebook, Mireille Guiliano fan page. Wonderful to talk to you. You will also be on my show next week, Fearless Fabulous You, so you can continue the conversation there. 9 o'clock on Monday at W4WN. We want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me, and I hope next time you come, we can share a few oysters, a few dozens of oysters.
Absolutely.
And some bubbly.
And some bubbly. We look forward to it, Mireille. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much.
Folks, you're listening to The Connected Table live on W4CY, and we will see you next week when our guests are Maricel Priscilla and David Rosengarten.
And wishing you a savory, delicious week.